Hello everyone.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Wherever you're watching from, this is our living room. Welcome.
Welcome, and Owen and Charles have asked us to do a kind of discussion and a talk around hospitality, and so we're going to just spend a few moments with you guys talking about hospitality, the importance of it, how Jesus modelled it, and then what we might be able to do in our daily lives, in our homes, in lockdown, to become better models of hospitality in the way that Jesus did. So Claire, you got something?
I think that Jesus, it's really important to Jesus. Do you want to know why I think? Of course you want to know why I think it's really important to Jesus. It's because I believe his opening miracle, although let's say, I think he performed many miracles before this, but the first written down miracle of Jesus is a hospitality miracle, which is why I think it's really important. I think it's something we wrestle with. I think it's something we have to, for every generation, figure out what that means culturally. But Jesus' first sort of public miracle was when he turned water to wine.
Right.
And so, probably the best place for me to start. Would you read it in a minute?
Absolutely.
Is that all right? I've got it down
no
here.
Problem.
I think Jesus modelled a hospitable lifestyle. I don't think it was all about tea and coffee, and I don't think it was all about like even a nice home or setting a scene, or some of the references that we think with the rise of things like Pinterest and how do you lay a table and how do you make something look nice and the perfect meal. I think that's a part of hospitality, but I think that it was more about the way he treated people.
Right. So it's not so much about presentation.
No.
It's as much about like the way you're making people feel.
The way you make people feel. The way you're making me feel.
Okay.
Wrong song choice probably for a...
It's all right.
So it's thoughtfulness, and if we wanted to grow in the fruits of the Spirit, if we wanted to grow in our understanding of becoming followers, transformational followers of Jesus, kindness is what you do. So that's the act of hospitality, but gentleness is how you treat people.
Right.
So I think true hospitality has those things.
Right.
So the act and the thoughtfulness of the act as well, which means you don't need the best china and you don't need the best living room. You don't actually even need food. You don't need any of those things, but they help if that's something you're good at. What do you reckon?
It sounds good.
Do you want to read that? Read from the scripture?
Sure. What is the scripture?
So it is from. Let me just check where it's from.
So you guys can read along if you like.
I don't know. It's the first miracle. I've not written down.
The first miracle of Jesus is in the Bible, and I will read from the Bible. We can't quite remember where the location is, but we've got it here.
We'll put it on
Now, on the third day, there was a wedding feast in the Galilean village of Cana, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were all invited to the banquet, but with so many guests in attendance, they ran out of wine. And when Mary realised it, she came to him and asked, "They have no wine. Can't you do something about it?" Love that.
Which is what makes me think there's been more miracles than that.
Because
how would she know that Jesus could do something about it if she hadn't already seen him do something of that sort of nature before?
Wow. Jesus replied, "My dear one, don't you understand that if I do this, it won't change anything for you, but it will change everything for me. The hour of my unveiling of power has not yet come." Mary then went to the servers and told them, "Whatever Jesus tells you to do, make sure that you do it." I love the reading between the lines, amazing.
Yeah.
Now there were 6 stone water pots standing nearby. They were meant to be used for the Jewish washing rituals, and each one held about 20 gallons or more. Jesus came to the servers and told them, "Fill the pots with water right up to the very brim." And then he said, "Now fill your pitchers and take them to the master of ceremonies." And when they poured out their pitcher for the master of ceremonies to sample, the water became wine. When he tasted the water that became wine, the master of ceremonies was impressed. Although he didn't know where the wine had come from, but the servers knew. He called the bridegroom over and said to him, "Every host serves his best wine first until everyone has had a cup or two, and then he serves the wine of poor quality. But you, my friend, have reserved the most exquisite wine until now." Isn't that amazing? This miracle in Cana was the first of many extraordinary miracles Jesus performed in Galilee and was a sign revealing his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
I mean, there's so many angles we could go down here, but for me, the way he made people feel. So, okay, right. Even that he was triggered by his mum to do that. Her concern for other people invited Jesus to do something.
Right.
So our concern for other people, our thoughtfulness, our care invites Jesus to respond to that.
Wow.
Secondary, the pots were ritual pots. These are the pots that people wash their hands in when they'd done something wrong.
Right.
So they would have been stood outside, and you would have gone before and washed your hands. Maybe ceremonial washing. So it could have been for many things, like a small sins. I've done that. So you would know when somebody had sinned, because they would go to these pots to wash their hands, to cleanse themselves before a meal.
Wow.
So Jesus took that and then brought that and filled it with something really special, that everybody, even when they were drunk, knew it was special. And said, that thing that you would normally do because it's shameful, I am going to bring that and say, welcome you into the middle of celebration.
Amazing.
I don't know, it just...
Is that not the heart of hospitality, though?
Yes.
To use something that was formerly shameful, or a place of brokenness, or a place of disgrace, and to begin to use it and fashion it as a place where Jesus can even dwell and live in, right?
Yeah.
That is hospitality right there.
Yeah. And so sometimes when you read in those stories, you've heard them so many times, and you put yourself in that timeline. You're not in that story. You're in your story now, but if you can try and imagine it from the multiple angles of the people that were there, there would have been, the servers themselves would have been thinking, what is he doing? These pots are not for wine.
Right.
These pots are not for that. And Jesus sets off a tone of, I am going to change your perceptions on what it looks like to create celebration, to care for people, to give them the best, to save the best till last, to welcome them where they're at. And it was all triggered by Mary saying, I've had enough of waiting around now. I want you to move on behalf of these people. So she was a guest, he was a server, even all of that, the fact that he was serving at a wedding, he was volunteering his time out of kindness, and then all of these multiple things, this wonderful picture of hospitality that was way more about the people than it was about Jesus.
I think it's amazing that his mum could kind of nudge him into his first miracle. Right. And even though Jesus is saying, he looks like he's kind of protesting against his mum. Mum, you don't understand, right? What I'm about to do here is gonna really change the way that happens for me and what happens for you. And yet at the same time, he still does it. And I love the interaction where there's this assumption from Mary's mum that Jesus' mum, Mary, that when she asks Jesus, it's gonna happen. So even though there's a protest from Jesus, she still assumes and instructs the people in the wedding, get ready because it's going to be a miracle. And again, I think if we can come confidently to Jesus and come confidently in the place of our need and in the place of maybe community needs, like you're saying, you're triggered by other people's need, or you're triggered, or you're aware of what else is going on. I'm looking around my community, my neighbourhood, I'm looking around my church or my small group right now, and I'm seeing there's a need. And then when we present that to Jesus, we are assured that he will respond. Absolutely. Because that is his heart. But I think this is the challenge that we have sometimes, is the challenge we have is that we see the need and we don't necessarily always understand our responsibility in it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but we have a responsibility in providing spaces of hospitality that can involve Jesus getting involved in our lives and our communities.
That space creating, provoking Jesus to a miracle. It's almost Mary's calls time. When God calls time, and which it's beautiful to think that we can provoke Jesus to a miracle. We can provoke Jesus to do something kind on behalf of the people, more than kind. I mean, that was what, we often pray for need. We often pray, don't we? God, do this, do that, because they need this, they need that. They didn't need wine.
Right.
And that makes me, I don't even quite get it. it was a total sweet thing, or act of generosity and kindness.
Yeah.
They didn't need more wine.
No. And they didn't. And the other thing about that, they obviously Jesus brings the wine, but then he brings incredible wine.
Right.
In that,
wine.
he doesn't bring like what he doesn't treat the guests as the master of ceremonies is expecting him to treat the guests. He doesn't follow the normal protocols of hospitality, which is we'll just make do with what we've got. Jesus is a person and God of excellence, and so he brings forth, even in his miracles, an excellence in the way that he does things. So the wine is first class. The wine is great. Even like you say, the people had probably already had some wine. They were probably not going to necessarily notice the difference. But it's like Jesus has a standard, and and this is what we're this is how we're going to live. This is how we're going to minister. This is how I'm going to help people. I love that, and it's been a challenge for me over the years to always present in hospitality. It's like you say, not to just have to go out and spend a load of money on stuff we can't afford to impress people, but just to present our best efforts on behalf of other people in whatever environment. I do think that is something that goes a long way in hospitality. You can go to a greasy spoon cafe and you can feel like you're receiving a hospitable atmosphere and environment, and you can go to the most expensive restaurants and environments and feel completely unwelcome.
Like you're an inconvenience.
Right. And so it's the spirit with which something is done. It is the attitude with which something, like you said, is contributed, and Jesus just models that really well in this story.
Hoteliers would say I was kind of like trying to figure out what is the best hospitality. Let's look at the hospitality industry as we understand it, and so I did a little bit of side reading, and I was like starting to look at what hoteliers do and how they sort of care for the people, and they would talk about it that hospitality, true hospitality, is way more than just delivering a guest service with a warmth and smile.
Right.
Which is kind of what we do in church. We think you're on the hospitality team, you've said hello, you've waved somebody in at the front door, and you've shook their hand, and you've been hospitable. But hoteliers would say it's something more. It's going to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the guests have remarkable experiences. And it's about creating a sense of belonging within the four walls of the context that you are hosting people.
Belonging, that's amazing.
So why would I want to go there? Well, all those little details, the way they've turned your bed down, the way that they've presented the toilet, how they've created a phone line, a menu, a welcome, all of those bits. You don't even need to see somebody. And in actual fact, I've been to hotels thinking about it as I'm just thinking, where I've never seen a person, or I might have seen one person, but I felt thought about and welcome because the whole environment was geared towards me having a good experience. Now, we don't want to build experiential Christians. That's not what it's about. But part of the growth needs as human beings, part of our growth needs are the environment. And if we're in an environment that helps us to learn and grow and understand, we're more likely to learn and grow and understand.
There's I wrote down a quote that I really love, and we would talk about it quite a lot in the first parts of Kingdom Company and how we were going to create those environments. And we would talk about the importance of environment setting and atmosphere setting and creating an environment of welcome and safety for people. And so when we first started doing our launch team nights, we hired a venue that was not the most cheap, not the cheapest, but it was a really great welcoming environment. And the cafe bar that we hired, he was a superb
amazing
giver of hospitality, was he not? And so it just made people feel welcome. It was kind of and it was worth the investment, I think, and we've talked a little bit about that in the past. It's worth the investment to create environments where people feel welcome and safe.
Like they could bring their family, that they can unravel a little bit, that they can sit comfortably, they don't have to be on edge, or all of those things that are very human, very visceral, very unconscious actually. Heat, lighting, sound, all of those experiences, and you create the environment, smells, all those senses. And then when you then have, the opportunity to lead, because we want people to find and follow Jesus. We want people to encounter Jesus in the meeting. But you've removed all the obstacles by creating an environment which makes it easy for people and for God Holy Spirit to move through the crowd.
There's a quote by Henri Nouwen, who's a Catholic priest who founded the charity L'Arche, I think is how you say it. And he has done some great studies and has got some amazing thoughts on hospitality. And I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it and get it wrong. Hospitality is not to change people. It's really important. But to offer them space where change can take place. Isn't that amazing?
Say that again.
Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. And I think we were chatting with some friends. We went out for a very legal, socially distanced coffee recently with a couple of our friends, and he is particularly good at holding a space for people can change. And I was chatting to him about this, and he was totally unaware of it. He was like, well, he said he hosts a group online, one of our groups online, a Zoom group, and you think, how can you be hospitable over digital media? Well, it's totally possible to do that. Yeah. And he said, well, I don't really do anything. I just let other people talk. That's what he said. And I said to him, but Rich, if you didn't do that, then it wouldn't happen. Yeah. And it's such a kind of underground skill. It's a soft skill to be able to host and be able to bring hospitality and to create an environment where people feel safe enough to contribute and to bring themselves. And then so he almost is saying to me, I'm not really doing very much. And I'm like, dude, if you don't do that, then the other stuff, the change doesn't take place. Yeah. And we've talked about this conviction, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, about the churches of the future need to be safe places. So one of the things that we wish our churches would be more is safe from gossip, free from gossip, free from judgment and condemnation in terms of when people are working things out. Safe to keep confidences, safe to get help, and for people to be treated courteously and for people to be treated kindly. It's not just a space to come to a small group, drink a brew and read the Bible. It's a context. Church is the context where change can take place. And so, but people, we've chatted a lot about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And just beyond physical needs like food and water and shelter, the next level up of people's perceived needs is safety. Yeah, absolutely. This is my belief. Before I commit to change, I need to feel safe.
Absolutely.
So before you ask me to change my lifestyle, before you invite me to come on this journey with Jesus, before you say, maybe God's got something else for you to do, I'm going to look left and right and go, yeah, but are you safe though? Yeah. But can I trust you though? Yeah. But am I all right here? Am I judged or am I helped? And I think like the great churches of the future are going to be safe places for people to fall apart and for Jesus to put them back together again.
So good. Like that makes me think, talking about the behaviour modification sometimes that we expect people to go through, and we want transformational followers. We want people that are transformed by Christ and will then become disciples and follow. We want that. But the church, at times as a whole, I think we all could do better at not just looking for behaviour modification so you make us safe. Right. So that we're constantly trying to make places safe, so we make sure that everybody does this, does that, doesn't do this, doesn't do that, doesn't do this.
So it's more regimented
safety, so that we want people to modify their behaviour so quickly that they don't have a chance to transform.
Wow.
And so actually, if you let Jesus and Holy Spirit work in somebody's life, transformation comes by being fused, connected to their purpose in becoming more like Jesus. And if we're training and equip people, in actual fact, people very often want to fit in anyway, so they want to go along. But if we're not careful and we don't do hospitality because of that, we want people to have space to what was that quote that you just said? Space to change.
An invitation, a space for people to change. Not to make them change, but to hold a space for them to change.
we force some behaviours underground, and we force people to fit in, not actually belong. And there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. And I spent years trying to fit in, so I get it. It's like, fitting in and belonging are two different things.
Absolutely right.
Belonging is, and I can come, and this is a safe space for me to grow up and grow old in my faith, or I can come and I have to modify so much, change the way I dress, change things I say, change things I like, change what I do, and before I know it, it's like cancer to your soul, because you behave in one way but believe in something completely different. And that's why you get those two tensions of somebody comes to church and they behave one way, and come Monday they're behaving something different, because they desperately want to belong, but you're forcing them to fit in.
Right, and you have to belong somewhere. Well, first of all, we belong with God. We belong to Jesus, and so that's our primary place of belonging. But it's in that place of belonging and acceptance of, we are not saved because we were worth saving. We are saved because God so loved the world, and so He's already identified each one of us as precious. We're made in His image. We're cherished and we're loved, and so that confers identity and value on all of us. And so when we understand that, and when we find places that understand that and aren't into behaviour modification, then we're more likely to change, like you say, in an unforced way. Like I spent a long time trying to conform and fit in, and it put pressure on me to. I felt like I was split down the middle, like I had some sort of split personality. And what I found was, as I became more integrated and found safe environments, safe places, safe people to begin to walk my discipleship journey with, there were lots of things in church culture that I just had to say no to. I don't want to do that. No, that's not healthy. That might be church, or that might be the culture, but that's not necessarily what Scripture says. And it gave me a sort of strength of character to know that I'm accepted and I'm loved by my Father, and so I don't have to do everything that everybody wants me to do. And I think true hospitality in the scriptural sense allows us spaces for us to be different, and for there to be a healthy diversity, and we can, that is the model of the church. Is that you don't think like me, I don't support the same football team, or listen to the same music, or eat the same food, or your background culturally is different from mine, your heritage is different from mine, and yet somehow through the reconciliation of God, we all find a place, all of us who shouldn't belong end up belonging. And it's not because of the tea and coffee ministry. It's because of the love of Jesus, right? It's because of the love of God shed abroad for all of us.
Like that word, even community, you can break it down. They have things in common, and they chose to be in unity.
Right.
Community.
Right.
We have things in common, and our commonality is Jesus.
Right.
And we choose to be in unity, community. We don't it's not, so we choose to prefer others, we choose to serve others. But absolutely, and I'm sure we'll be saying it forever, we don't have to all be the same, look the same, think the same, even have the same political views. We don't have to do all of that. There is grace on all fronts there. And so wrestling with the other stuff that is the non-negotiables is worth doing in a safe place.
Absolutely.
Because there is some stuff in the Bible that needs there is truth, all truth. But it's worth wrestling down. But the other stuff shouldn't be the stuff that separates us. We choose to have a commonality. We're in community together, and we come and we share that together. And hospitality then takes on a different space, because it means then I'm not so concerned about having to change you, make you something. I'm not saving you. I'm not hammering all the hard edges off you. It's my job to come. That's Jesus' job. And
but in fairness to you, I was actually going to say, you've been the person I probably learned most off in that. I'm a bit more of a swooper inner. And I love to get involved in a crisis. And so I'd be Mary, I'd be Jesus' mum, go, wait a minute, it's not going to plan, come on, you can do something. And what you've done over the years is, with me, is you said to me things like, Matt, you're a smart guy, you love God, you'll get there. And I remember when you first started saying that to me, and I was like, how can you be so sure? Are you sure? And it was it was weird. It was like a hospitality gift, because it was, you invited me to change at a pace or with Jesus in my own journey, and you didn't judge me or push me away, and you didn't fix me either, and you didn't give me all the answers. And I think I love that. I obviously appreciate that. Thanks so much for doing that. And thanks
I was doing it.
But it's more your nature is to hold the space for people to change. Whereas I think my nature is to swoop in and fix people. What would you say to people like me who are fixers of people, or I'm a recovering fixer of people.
Recovering fixer.
What would you say to people who are fixers of people, who every person needs, they can identify things that if they just did this, if they thought about that a little bit more, what would you say to those people?
That's a good, it's a good question. I immediately think of the analogy of a wedding plan. I don't know why, it's just what came to mind. Hopefully it's useful. When you spend ages trying to figure out who's going to sit on what table.
Right.
And so the fixers will want to make sure, well, I'm going to put those 10 people there and those 10 people there, and they've been travelling from here and I'm sure they'll get on. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll do all this. And loads of detail goes into it. Pretty much at every wedding you go to, people will go and find the people they want to talk to.
So true.
They just will.
I will.
They will find the people they want to mix with who, for a variety of reasons, people are people. They're like water. They go wherever they want. They seep through things. And you do. And so I think you can, for so much, you can shape that. And even churches. In an environment. Right. So much you can do that. And the rest has to be about the person's willingness to integrate into whatever it is that you'd like to teach them. You would like to teach them. I see. So from my teaching background, I could invite the students to learn, and I could create the best learning environment, and I could present them with the most amazing ideas. But I would find more often than not that it was within the learning process that people find their own flow.
That's awesome.
So I think, and you watch those patterns, so somebody learns something, or you think, have you ever done it? It's so funny because I do it as well. You go into a situation, you're chatting about something, you come back and say, and I told them this, and I told them that, and I told them the other. And then the other person you're talking to says, yeah, I told them that as well. And the person you've both been talking to does none of the things that you've been talking about. And you're like, but I told them that. Because in your telling is not what's important. Right. It's in your teaching and letting people learn. So, and Jesus constantly invited people into his story.
He did. We talked to this about the parables, right? Yeah. And we were chatting this morning about his stories. Eugene Peterson says that Jesus' stories are, and it might be a bit controversial for people, but he says they're metaphors, and metaphors are lies. They're not. There's no way that the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, right? Yeah. Because it's nothing like. It's like a mustard seed, but it isn't a mustard seed, because what Jesus is trying to do is trying to create metaphors and that cause us to wonder and cause us to wonder, what does he mean by that? And then when he tells stories, we try and figure out which person are we in that story.
Yeah, right, okay. Which one can I relate to?
And so that's like a hospitality. And I think, again, if we can create space for people to learning environments in church, learning environments in small groups, not just teaching environments where you absorb information, but spaces where you begin to work through that information. We've tried to experiment with the Kingdom Company, found it to be probably the most helpful thing. Shared spaces of learning, so not a traditional talk all the time, a short talk to contextualize things, and then everybody, let's do some group learning. And the feedback we've got, and again, it's not my natural thing. I didn't want to do that, but the teachers amongst us, the community builders amongst us said, let's not go and do the same thing that we always do. Let's create some different learning environments. So I do think in this COVID lockdown experience, as we begin to move forward into different kinds of church experiences, and we're going to need to create different environments for people.
I agree.
That it's a really beautiful opportunity to do some group learning and to do some group thinking and to do some collective thinking.
Yes, and that space to let people know the truth for themselves. I don't know, I think I've probably ditched the idea, or trying to ditch the idea, that I am a keeper of God's truth.
Right.
Because as if me, tiny little dot in history, could actually impact God's truth and change it. It's truth whether I believe it or not. It's truth whether you believe it or not.
It's always true.
Truth is outlives me, came before me, will outlive me, goes on forever. And sometimes we become our self-obsessed keepers of the truth.
Yeah.
And so the reason why we don't welcome people and we don't embrace conflict or discussion or like wrestle or doubts or all of those things is because we think it affects the truth. We concern, I don't know about you, but that just, my personal opinion, my point of view is that I've perhaps tried to guard the truth so much that I've not wanted to open up a space for that kind of discussion or wrestle, or because I'm concerned that these people then might not be led to the truth. But actually, I think even the Alpha courses, things like that, teach you that the more people get to discuss, the more the truth speaks for itself, and people are led to all truth, because Jesus is really good at presenting his truth to the people that he calls. Yeah. And I'm not then Manyara, que sera, sera, whatever will be. I don't believe that at all. I do believe we have a responsibility to present God's truth as best we know how, to become transformational followers, to help other people become followers as well. But I think that the driver needs to be different. The driver needs to be like that. I'm going to clear everything. What's that sport where you
curling? Curling.
Yeah, that.
I presume that's what you're doing there. Are you brushing the curling stone? Right, I don't know what it was.
I'm brushing the ice, and somebody else is like trying to get to God, and they're trying to get to God, and I'm just going to brush the ice so that their like curling ball goes as far as it can and as close to Jesus as possible.
I love that. So we talked about it in the way that we'd grown up with a lot of telling, like people would tell us things from the front of church.
Yes.
And
it was a way, it was a style though.
It is a style, it was a style. It's sometimes effective, it's an instructional style. It's not necessarily anything wrong with it in context. But Jesus he would tell, there were times that he would tell, but he would also invite.
Absolutely.
And we've talked a lot about invitational response. Like hospitality often leaves a space for people to add their own point of view. And like you said, it's interesting what we'll learn over the last few years, more because we stepped out of a different environment into a pioneering environment, is that this invitational environment is really helpful for people to throw themselves in, and they're more likely to throw themselves into an invitational environment because there's a space for them to do so. In a telling environment, in an instructional environment, there's less space for them to be. It's the same with songs. As a songwriter, you always leave space for the listener and the participant to imagine or to believe themselves into your own song.
Yeah.
And if you can write and talk and preach and create environments of community where people can throw themselves in, not in a prescriptive way, not in a sort of tick list way, but in a true adding value, participation way, then I think people are more likely to want to get involved in whatever it is that we're doing.
You don't want passive believers.
No.
People that just come, eat, drink, go away.
Right.
And so if you create such strict regimes around hospitality, and then this is the way that it has to be, and this is what I do, it becomes more about the host than it does about the person you're hosting. I do believe true hospitality, I've used that a few times now. Oh my gosh, it's probably just such a broad statement. Okay, good hospitality, in my experience, in my opinion, is evidenced about how you feel when you leave. How the person that's being hosted feels, not about the host. I have been to time and again when people have hosted me and I thought, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're such a good cook. You can set the scene. What a spread. And I can't, and everybody's talking about the host. And you're like, I think that's just a really good party planner. You're just amazing at transforming Pinterest. But really good hospitality is, how did I feel when I left your company? Was I uplifted? And let's transfer that not just into food or, that's part of it is, did I feel welcome? Did I feel safe? Do I feel like $1 million? Did I feel uplifted? What do you want people to feel? How did people feel when they left Jesus? Did they feel like they could go on and do the Great Commission? I think being around Jesus, you probably would have been like, come on, whoa, woo, this is, oh my God, did he really say that?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I could as well. It helps you be brave. It helps you to face tomorrow. Helps you to get up in the morning. Makes you know that you've got somewhere to go when the day's rubbish. I think hospitality done well is that. It's not about the host. So actually really liberating, because not everybody can set a table like Pinterest.
No, I can't. I couldn't. I mean, I can make edible food, but presentation is...
It's a challenge for you.
It's a challenge for me. So it's a learned skill that I haven't got. So I want to say one comment
Okay,
on
go.
active listening, and then let's do some questions before we wrap it up. Hospitality, I tell you, we were thinking of talking about this over the last wee while, and one of the things, the gift of hospitality, or the people who make me feel most comfortable, are the people who are active listeners. So I remember, we've talked about it before, where you hear conversation where people seem to be saying statements next to each other, but they're not actually having a conversation.
Yeah.
So there's no pausing, there's no referential back and forth. So I heard what you said, what do you think? There's no invitation back, there's no seesaw, there's no, it's statement followed by statement followed by statement. And I found that the people who listen well, and I'm really trying to learn how to do this because I don't think it comes very naturally. The people who listen and can appreciate are so important in helping people feel safe and welcomed. The people who can hear and can create a space for other people to talk. We found this at KC, right? Is that there were times where people just wanted to unburden themselves. And it was like people didn't care what our belief system was or what our values were as a church or where they could give. It was like, I got stuff I got to get off my chest. And you and I and others in the team just had to hold a space for them to just unburden themselves. And I think that's a massively underrated gift of hospitality, is if I can find people who listen to me actively and help me externally process, I feel welcomed and I feel heard and I feel valued. So that's my thought on that. I just wanted to mention
I think some people have just never been let to get to the end of their sentences.
Yeah.
And it's very hard because sometimes you enter into those conversations and you're wanting to welcome people and spend time with people, and actually sometimes it goes a bit too far and that person's got not enough self-reflection skills to be able to know when they're just talking. But even so, like you're saying, leaving space for people to come to the end of themselves, an introverted person who always gets interrupted, or somebody who has got something to say and their processing times is not really quick. I'm an internal processor a little bit more than you are. You're an external, so you talk by externalizing things, and so that's really helpful, whereas I don't think like that. I take a little bit longer to come to my words, and so there's so many times I've over the years I've been in conversations and I've left feeling sad because I thought none of you waited for me to finish.
Right.
And I can recall lots of conversations where I never got to get to the end of my sentence.
Right.
I never got to get to the end of what I wanted to say, and it might have been too long and the moment passed, and you live with the disappointment of it. But if we could be within church, making space for that, and then also teaching people, and then so reflect the art of self-reflection, the art of emotional intelligence.
Right.
Is this just because I haven't got to the end of myself, or is it just that I'm saying too much and I need to make space for somebody else to talk now? I think all those things, rather than avoiding it and not having those conversations, teaching those things, helping transformation happen by saying, hey, you want this, well, you're going to have to do that to get that.
I remember thinking about that family episode that we had. It's a beautiful picture of hospitality to me, where Christmas a few years back, and one of our kids got into a political debate with... got into a really strong political debate about the benefits of a certain public worldwide figure.
Yeah.
And it was not well received in the family that we were at.
Yeah.
But what I loved was, my favourite thing is that some people who couldn't cope with the tension in the room left, which was fine. But then people who could cope with it kind of were custodians of that.
Brilliant. custodians of that
of the
complex
environment,
conversation.
right? So
Yeah.
it was heated, or there was challenge, or there was
Yeah.
conflict, but it was never out of whack because it was there were guardians of that environment who were coaching, who were on hand if it got a bit strange, and there were tears at some points, and there was somebody unfollowed somebody on Instagram and then refollowed them later on. But what happened? I remember on the way home. Do you remember? Our unnamed child said, "On reflection, I don't think that was probably the best time to speak about that." And it was like we all were like looking at each other going,
You think?
"Do you think so?" But the preciousness of holding that space of going,
the space for the differences, and the commitment for resolution, the commitment for conversation, the commitment for connection. Actually,
absolutely,
that was vital. That was an environment where we feel incredibly welcome all the time. The house that we were in, and the commitment to connection was way more important than the conversation. The commitment to push away. Well, I'm not going to let that get in the way of me connecting with you. No, you're not. That you say or do is not going to stop me coming close to you and empathizing with you and bringing my love. I'm not going to withhold my love. I'm not going to withhold my kindness or my gentleness. And so...
and I'm not going to agree with your politics, and I don't agree with your statements, but you know what? We're not going to fall out about it because I'm committed to staying connected with you. And this is family, and this is what we do, and what goes, and this is the age where everything's on video and everything's on the gram. So put your phones down, close the doors, we finish it here. I don't know. That was one of the best Christmases for me because it could have gone really crazy, and that person, in fact, I'm going to text that person today and just say thank you for doing it because it was just powerful, and the learning experience off the back of it, and the fact that nobody's fallen out with anybody, man, the precious, the modelling of that environment. Anyway, questions.
So well, okay, can you remember a time when you were hosted really well?
Yes.
Okay, talk around it then. Tell me a little bit about that, and how did you feel? What was it that made you feel so hosted?
So we've got a family in our launch team who are amazing. They are friends, the Blacks, and whenever you hang out with them, they are ridiculous. They always come. They've thought about the occasion before you. But so when they come to see us, they always bring cakes from their friend's bakery. So the whole thing's got an amazing backstory. Like, this is our friend who's baked cakes. He's just starting a business, so we're helping him out and we're bringing cakes. And they bring immense amount of cakes. It's not like they bring one each.
That's sugar
rush,
crazy.
It's
I know.
It's hardcore. But it's not just really about the cakes. It's the care. It's the forethought. And so they always, and then you leave their company and you just feel like that was great. It wasn't just about the cakes, it was about the way that, like you said before, the way they made me feel. And then there's a pub up the road called the Ring of Bells, isn't it? And there's a young lady who lives next door to my sister. She's got to be about 16 or 17. She said, I saw you on your sister's Instagram. And she just started talking to me. And she was so natural. There wasn't anything forced about it. She wasn't, she was just being naturally herself. And then she made sure we had our drinks topped up and all of that. And they were just like, you're great. I just like you.
I would want to come back here again.
And I think what I learned from hospitality is the people who are great hosts are often people who are very comfortable in themselves.
So true. I think that's the thing about saying it's about the guest, it's not about the host. So somebody who can exercise true hospitality is not trying to make themselves look good or feel good. They're trying to make their guest feel good and look good.
Right. Here's a question for you then.
Go then.
Go back one for me.
These ones up here, those ones.
Can you recall to mind? I am going to ask you this. It's going to be a challenge for you to do this.
Okay.
Can you call to mind a time when you felt unwelcome, and could you articulate how you felt, and what did you do in that situation?
So I can. We were at a sort of dinner dance a number of years ago.
Was I there?
Yeah, we were there. Our kids were really young, and we were just coming into a new group of friends actually, and we basically, there was tables of 10 and we were 2, and there was only 2 other people that we knew on this table, and the other 8 you weren't around so much because you were playing at the event, and so the other 8 just were really unhappy with the fact that an extra new people had been added to the group. And, you know, everything was right. The table was beautiful. The food was beautiful. We'd paid to be there, so it was a good event. The entertainment was amazing. Everything else was going on. But I was like an unwelcome guest on that table. And they were very polite. They were very kind. But they just were a little bit, you know, that austere, icky. And I just felt really out of place.
Right.
I just was like, I just want to go to the toilet the whole night.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we were so excited because we were venturing into this new venture at the time. We were looking at even moving house. We were looking at moving locations to move here. So this potentially were a new group of friends, and they just were not ready. They didn't want it. Now they shouldn't. I'm not saying they should have wanted it. But I felt super unwelcome in that moment.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was really difficult. And then another occasion when I went to quite a high-end shop, and I felt unwelcome because just somebody, the way that they were looking at me while I was looking at clothes. And it's a big deal for me anyway. I try and go into those shops. I know when I'm in a good place, when I can go into something like a Harvey Nichols with my head high. Because I got brought up with market stalls and secondhand peacocks and, you know, like I'm a home bargains girl, a different genre of like things. So for me, I would never have dreamed to buy in something so expensive. So I test myself sometimes, how confident I am, much do I believe, you know, like how much could I just walk anywhere and be myself. So I'll walk into those shops. Okay, I know whether I'm feeling a bit, you know, crummy about myself today because when I walk in, I can't do it. And so, you know, sort of tested it, and you just get walking around having a look at things. It would just make me feel really just like they were a bit snooty.
Yeah.
And so I just don't want to be in that environment when that is. I mean, they're very superficial to those two things.
They're about atmospheres and environments and how they make you feel. Yeah,
like,
that's important, right?
It was important.
Yeah,
it was important.
absolutely.
And that night that I was there for that sort of dinner and dance thing, is that I wasn't even expecting much from them. I wasn't asking them to become my best friends for life. I just was hoping somebody might want to have a conversation with me where they listen and I asked them questions and they listened and we might have found a bit of connection. And so, that didn't develop. Those friendships did not develop.
I'm trying desperately to remember where that was, but we'll talk about it after.
I'm sure they're all very lovely people.
Do you know what I want to do now? I want to go back and fix it. But
I know, and I'm sure they're all very, very lovely people.
No, I'm sure they are.
That's how I felt.
That's right. It's how you feel. It's interesting, isn't it? I think we do have a part to play in the way that we perceive. Because we taught our kids, or I taught the boys particularly. I don't know if we've done it with Gracie, to go up to the top floor of Harvey Nichols and start trying on ridiculously expensive things that they can never afford. Just so that they can just know what it feels like to hang around with people who make them feel uncomfortable, or they may not be in those environments on a normal basis. And one of our kids, he loves it. He goes in and asks to try on these £3,000 coats. He's got no money to buy it, and he always says to them, "Yeah, I'll have a think about it." And I'm in the corner just chuckling like, "This is like Sam, not in a million years." Anyway, not yet.
I think.
Should we call it a day?
No, I just want to do this one. Let's think about it for ourselves, because we're in a weird space, different tiers of lockdown now, and what we might have thought was hospitality is not the same. What practices of actual hospitality can you do?
Well,
can we do now?
I'll speak personally.
Yeah.
Because I think these, I always love it when you hear like behind the scenes tips from people. So I think these would be my behind the scenes. I think I send text messages to individual people. And when I'm thinking of somebody, I send them a voice note or a text message. And I've learned over the years to tell people how I feel about them, only if it's positive.
And another thing, you don't share that stuff.
No. And just to say, look, I was thinking about it today.
Yeah.
I sent a mate of mine who's been involved in the lockdown. He's running a church there in one of the top tier 3s. I said, listen, just thinking about you today and hope you're all right. It's mad how that just can be enough for a lot of people. Words and encouragement and connection. Just say, you're not forgotten. So that's been important. I think in the way that I've posted on Instagram, I've tried to become less telly, and because by nature I'm kind of type 8 Enneagram, like quite directive. I can see things from how they should be backwards.
Yeah.
And we've had conflict over that over the years. And so I'm having to learn to hold the space, create more space for people to get involved, be more inclusive. You're helping me with that. And then I think understand, like right now, that one of my greatest gifts to people I love and serve with is just going to be a consistency. And I think that that's kind of something that Jesus always was consistent. And so, like I said about a safe place and a safe environment, you need to be consistent in your love and care for people so that people can come to depend on who you represent. They can't depend on me all the time. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to hopefully consistently reflect and send you towards Jesus. We had a chat with a local vicar. I was encouraging them. They're trying to plant a church locally, and I said something that you gave me the other day, which was, you can always see the spire of the church in the village. And I said, and that's one thing that the church needs to be right now, is present, is connected to community, is we ain't going nowhere. We might change, we might not meet in the way that we used to, we might be changing our style of worship and changing things up, and that's good and that's helpful, but we ain't going anywhere. And I think that in the long term, that provides a safe place. It speaks of safety and consistency, and it speaks of love and long-lasting care. So those are the things that I'm really trying to aspire to at the minute. What about you?
Yeah, very similar. Just trying to, whenever I'm in a space, at the moment it's digital. I know, like, I don't want to only be in I really love, I love digital media, but I don't want to only be in digital spaces with people. I'm longing for the days when we can gather and meet again. And I am enjoying the smallness again. I've been able to just go for lots of coffees and walks. I love doing that anyway. It would be my jam. But whenever I'm in a space where there's a group of people trying to find ways of hosting, of thinking about creating that environment for people. So, putting people at ease, if not laughing at people if the digital stuff goes wrong, going, hey, it's all right, we're all learning together. Trying to put people at ease, constantly thinking about how can I peacemake, how can I help people feel like they belong, like that it's not weird, like it's not an odd space. So that's one thing. And then really practically at home, I'm trying to find a way of creating an outside space, because we now have moved into tier 2, which means we can meet people in the garden again, but our garden space has got no covering. So I'm just actively looking now on eBay for a sail that I can attach to the back.
An actual sail?
They're like big sort of waterproof canvas sails.
Why are they called sails?
Because they look like a sail. They're a sail shape.
It's not an actual ship sail.
No. But they're like, they're called, I don't know why, the canopy or sail that we can attach onto the back of the house where our patio doors open. We've got a little fire pit there, so I can cover it up and make it like dry space, so that I can still try proactively make space to be hospitable in my home.
You are very good at that.
Trying to make the best of a really bad situation. Maybe not even make the best, just make some good. Try and make some good, because will cost financially, but probably less than the amount we might spend going out for coffees or meals over the next 6 months. So do that, and then still be able to create, a space where people can come and gather. And I really would love to be able to go and do that at other people's, because now we can gather in gardens again. That's quite a big deal.
It is a big deal.
But it's only if we can, at least the summer.
Well, the one thing we do know is that the whole lockdown situation is going to be with us for a while, and so looking at new ways and innovative ways to be hospitable, not just in the traditional ways, but maybe having to relook at those things is something that, like you're saying, we're all going to have to commit to, and we have to be thoughtful and mindful about those practices if we want to represent Jesus to our communities. And I do think like our communities are going to be crying out for different ways of doing church, different ways of hosting, different ways of reaching and welcoming our communities. So
gotta try.
It's exciting times.
We've got to try, right?
I agree.
We've got to try.
I agree. But
we'll live within the times that we're in, maximise what God has given us, the resources that God's given us, and we invite people into our lives, and as we open up our lives, Jesus tells us in Matthew 5 that prompts people to open up to their generous Father in heaven.
Verse.
Such a good verse. Magic. Yeah. So that's it from us. Pray blessing on your family, and thank you for joining us.